Allen Company, 47 years young and a proud sponsor, wishes OOIDA all the best as you celebrate 50 years.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
Winter weather has arrived in North Dakota, and now the state's Highway Patrol is giving advice to commercial motor vehicle drivers. Landline Now's Ashley Blackford speaks with their safety and education officer to hear some tips on how best to travel through North Dakota in the winter season. The FMCSA has asked for comments concerning detention time, and OOIDA has responded. I'll discuss that, plus what the association had to say to the most recent meeting of the Women of Trucking Advisory Board with OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. And finally, after weeks of infighting and multiple votes, we finally have a new Speaker of the House. So what does that mean for issues important to truckers? I'll find out from Colin Long of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. An advisory committee tasked with making recommendations about side underride guards will soon meet for a second time. Earlier this year, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration formed a committee that will make recommendations to the Secretary of Transportation about safety regulations related to underride crashes. The group met virtually for the first time in May. They'll meet again on November 15th. Topics on the agenda this time around include a review of committee guidelines, the target population for side underrides, technology advances, and hurdles to implementing a possible mandate, something NHTSA is considering. The committee started with 16 members. It now has 19 with the addition of 3 people who represent first responders and law enforcement. OOIDA board member Doug Smith is on the committee, one of 2 people representing motor carriers. He expressed his grave concerns about a side underride mandate during the first meeting. Those concerns are shared by OOIDA, which said in formal comments earlier this year that a side underride mandate would be costly and impractical. And then there were 2. The United Auto Workers and Ford have come to terms on a tentative agreement, potentially ending the strike there. The deal centers around a pay bump of at least 25% more between now and 2028. It still needs to be ratified by UAW workers at Ford, a process that could take more than a week. But UAW leadership says the more than 16,000 UAW members who have been on strike will be returning to work before the ratification process is complete. The 41-day UAW strike is nearing an end at Ford, but continues at GM and Stellantis. Some 29,000 UAW members there will remain on strike until their companies come to terms on their own agreements. First California, now Arizona. Regulators in the Grand Canyon state say they're closely monitoring self-driving vehicles in the state. The statement came one day after California regulators suspended Cruise's license to operate fully driverless cars there, citing safety concerns. The Arizona DOT says public safety is their highest priority and that they're in regular communication with and closely monitoring Cruise and other companies testing and operating self-driving vehicles in Arizona. Authorities in Florida are on the lookout for someone who keeps slashing the tires of semi-trucks. The Florida Highway Patrol says it's now investigating 10 separate incidents. All happened overnight, all involving trucks parked along exit and entrance ramps along I-75 and I-10 in Columbia County, Florida. One of the victims says he woke up to find all 18 of his tires flat. He says it looked like someone stabbed them with an ice pick. North Dakota has been hit with its first winter storm of the season. The state's Highway Patrol is now putting out videos of safety tips for commercial motor vehicle drivers. Sergeant Wade Cattermas says it's important truck drivers be prepared for inclement weather.
So North Dakota is a relatively flatter state. On the western end, we do have some rougher terrain going through the Badlands, but it is mostly open, not a lot of trees, not a lot of cover. So when it does snow and the wind picks up, visibility tends to reduce fairly quickly. And, that can be compounded if we have additional snowfall and snow accumulating on the roadway and then drifting in, creating or block lanes or block roadways. And this can occur very rapidly, especially if there's snowfall on the roadway. And actually today is kind of our first day of winter up in the northwest part of the state. We have snow accumulating on the ground, icy, wet road conditions appearing up there already. So it's already begun here in North Dakota.
Some of the tips from the Highway Patrol include adhering to road closures, making sure you're using winter diesel or anti-gelling additives, and reducing speed during hazardous conditions. A California trucking company that's been in business for close to 100 years is folding. In a post on the company's website, Certified Freight Logistics says it's closing for good soon after 93 years in business. CFL is a refrigerated carrier based out of Santa Maria, California, specializing in hauling fruit and vegetables. According to FMCSA's Safer website, they have 120 truck drivers and 112 trucks. The Pacific Coast Business Times reports that CFL has set November 18th as a date for a complete shutdown. The company cited a tightening labor market as the reason for closing. A renovated rest area in northwestern Indiana means more truck parking spaces. The Indiana DOT held a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Kankakee Welcome Center off I-65 in Jasper County on Tuesday. The newly completed project includes 150 truck parking spots on the southbound side of the interstate and another 75 on the northbound side. Other amenities at the Welcome Center include a dog park, an adult recreation area, walking trails, and a pond. The American Trucking and Industry Leader Hall of Fame just got a bit bigger. They inducted their 2023 class of honorees on Wednesday in Kansas City, Missouri. The list includes Robert A. Young Jr., founder of ABF Freight, Ted Rogers, the first president of the American Trucking Associations, Frank Sieberling, the founder of the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company, Al and Don Schneider, the founders of Schneider National, and Harry Kent and Edgar Worth, the founders of Kenworth. Speaking of Kenworth, the event also celebrated the company's 100th anniversary at the ceremony. Lawrence Gratian, executive director of the American Truck Historical Society, said that made this year's event a bit more special.
It's really an honour because to be able to induct Kenworth at their 100th anniversary is just awesome. So you've also got Schneider, National Carriers, Goodyear, needs no explanation. Exactly. It's Goodyear, right. And ATA. And ATA, whilst OOIDA and ATA are not always on the same page, they're all an important part of this industry. So yeah, absolutely.
This is the third year for the ATHS Hall of Fame. OOIDA was honored as part of the first class back in 2021. And finally, 10 community colleges in Iowa are getting a chunk of money to enhance their CDL training programs. Close to $5 million will be spread out via Iowa's Commercial Driver's License Infrastructure Program. A news release from the Office of Governor Kim Reynolds says the grants will expand the use of modernized infrastructure needed for CDL training programs. An estimate says the grant money will support an extra 1,300 students in CDL training programs at those community colleges. In March, Iowa awarded nearly $3 million to support entry-level driver training at 46 training locations throughout the state. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. November 6th through the 19th are the dates for this year's Truckers for Troops campaign. During the campaign, if you join OOIDA or renew your membership, 10% of that money will go into a fund to send care packages to U.S. troops overseas and to help homeless veterans through the Veterans Community Project. If you'd like to join OOIDA, you can do it at a discount. Just call the membership department during business hours at 816-229-5791. You can join the association or renew your membership for 2 years for $50, a $40 discount. Next, Ashley Blackford gets some winter driving tips from the North Dakota Highway Patrol. We'll be back in just a moment with more of the show. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Attention all truckers, Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I want to talk to you about those dreaded tax problems. I know you want to keep on trucking and not even think about them, but let's face it, they're not going away all on their own. You need professional help. I've been helping truckers put their tax problems in the rearview mirror for years. I can help you too. Call me now for a free consultation at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com. It's like I always say, keep your eyes on the road, I'll keep mine on the IRS. 888-557-4020.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now, welcome back. North Dakota got hit with its first snowfall of the season this week. The state's Highway Patrol has put out videos for commercial motor vehicle drivers with some tips on how to be ready for winter weather travel. To speak with me about those, Sergeant Wade Cattermas joins me. He is the Safety and Education Officer with the North Dakota Highway Patrol. Wade, can you start out by talking to me about the goal of these videos and the message that the Highway Patrol wants to get across?
Well, last winter was probably one of the worst winters we've had as far as snowstorms and vehicle crashes and patrol vehicles being hit. And when we evaluated each of the incidents over this last winter, a lot of them were initiated off of a commercial motor vehicle losing control, going in the ditch, and blocking up some of our main arteries, our roadways. Thus, in turn, we have other vehicles coming into that location and then crashing. So we identified some areas that we wanted to try and educate new CMV drivers coming into North Dakota that might have never driven in this type of weather, or realize how quickly some of the road conditions can change in the state here. And, just hoping they utilize the videos for educational purposes. And when they do come up into North Dakota this time of year, just proceed with caution. Try and do as much pre-planning as you can as far as weather conditions, road conditions, and then plan accordingly.
And for those who aren't familiar with North Dakota, what can winters be like there?
So North Dakota is a relatively flatter state. On the western end, we do have some rougher terrain going through the Badlands, but it is mostly open, not a lot of trees, not a lot of cover. So when it does snow and the wind picks up, visibility tends to reduce fairly quickly. And, that can be compounded if we have additional snowfall and snow accumulating on the roadway and then drifting in, creating or blocked lanes or blocked roadways. And this can occur very rapidly, especially if there's snowfall on the roadway. And actually, today is kind of our first day of winter up in the northwest part of the state. We have snow accumulating on the ground, icy, wet road conditions occurring up there already. So it's already begun here in North Dakota.
I looked up on Google and I saw that the first unofficial winter storm is happening. What do you know, I guess, what this winter is looking like?
Well, it sounds like they're going to be some average to a little above average snowfall. I think the forecasters can do the best they can to try and predict ahead of time, what to expect for the winter. But, it's more of that short range forecast that we really rely on, when meteorologists have better data of incoming storms and stuff. I think last year they did a really good job about predicting the seriousness of a lot of the storms that came through North Dakota. Between us and the North Dakota Department of Transportation, we are trying to do a lot of pre-messaging in advance of some of these storms as well, letting drivers know that, they could expect road closures, just depending on how the snow falls, where it falls, and how much falls.
And when it comes to some of the accidents with trucks, is it often out-of-state drivers or is it people, from there that just aren't prepared, or is it kind of just like a mixture of both?
I say we have a mixture of both, but a lot of times, especially on our interstate system, we have a lot of drivers from out of the area passing through here. It can be a mixture of both, but a lot of the CMV drivers that traditionally work out of North Dakota and travel up here in the winter know to slow down, and when it's time to shut the rig down and when it's time to start it back up again. It might be sunny and dry in one part of the state, but on the other part of the state, the road could be closed, or the road conditions could be severe, icy, treacherous. That's why it's important. If they do stop once on one side of the state, just ensure that they check our ND Roads app to see what the rest of the state is like.
North Dakota's winter weather can change quickly, and roadways can quickly become unsafe for travel. The North Dakota Highway Patrol and the North Dakota Department of Transportation work together to determine if and when roadways should be shut down for travel.
And I want to kind of go through each video and talk about some of the advice. One of the first video was on road closures. Can you talk to me more about that?
Correct. I would say over the past couple of winters, we found when we close roads, our main roads that we usually close typically would be the interstate system, I-94 or I-29. A lot of times when we close that road, then drivers use navigation apps. Those navigation apps will pick up that I-29 and I-94 are closed, but then it will reroute them onto secondary roads, which a vast majority of time, those secondary roads are worse than our, the main thoroughfares like the interstate system. Mm-hmm. So, the state has starting to close some of those other roads. So, the video just kind of outlines and wants drivers to be aware that if the main artery is closed, don't try and circumvent that by going around it, especially if you're already on the main system. You might not be able to get out of the storm, and the secondary roads may be worse than what the primary system is.
One of the other videos was on hazardous conditions. Can you explain what those are and the importance of adhering to the no travel advisories?
Yes, federal regulations do require CMV drivers to pull off and stop, if the road conditions become icy or treacherous or unsafe for travel. A lot of times in the state here, troopers are gauging that off of our road advisories. If there is no travel advisory out there and CMV drivers are out on the road and end up crashing or going into the ditch, they could face being cited with that violation. Because a lot of times when the road is labeled as no travel advised here in North Dakota, it's just a hair short of being closed. The road conditions can change very quickly. And at that point, when it's a no travel advised, then, it's often that it could go to a no or a road closed. So
you'd mentioned there's a lot of flat areas in North Dakota. Can you talk to me about the video on high winds and just how dangerous that can be, especially for trucks?
A lot of times when drivers are going through the mountainous areas, they'll go through valleys and stuff that have high wind warnings or high wind condition signs up. It's really no different here in North Dakota. A lot of the wide open spaces where there's no terrain or other shrubbery to kind of block those winds along the roadway, we can get gusts up to 50, 60, 70 miles an hour, just depending on the storm and the conditions at the time. And usually we find a lot of times if you have a larger vehicle or like a van trailer that is not loaded, where they're empty, a lot of times those drivers have a hard time keeping that vehicle straight and on the roadway. And it only adds to it when the road conditions are icy. It makes it a lot easier for winds to push that vehicle off the road or tip it over.
And you'd mentioned this briefly, but there's the ND Roads app. Can you talk to me about what that is?
Correct. That is an app that's available on Android or iPhone platforms where it's managed by North Dakota Department of Transportation, and it has up-to-date information on road conditions, construction zone, even weight restrictions. There's a lot of different features within that app that I do highly encourage anybody that travels through North Dakota to put it on their phone and use it for reference, especially in the pre-planning purposes as well, and before they come into North Dakota.
And one of the other videos was on winter diesel and what cold temperatures can do to diesel. Can you talk to me more about that?
Yes, when temperatures start to get below freezing, get colder up in the upper Midwest, a lot of times, the diesel will gel up, it will thicken, and then their vehicles will shut down. If you're a driver that drives mainly in the south, where you obviously have warmer weather, it's a good thing before you come up to the colder climates is to put the winter diesel in or some other type of additive in your fuel to prevent it from gelling up at the time. That can become dangerous, especially, let's say it's below zero, you have wind chills out there that are treacherous, and your vehicle gels up in the middle of nowhere. It could be a while before somebody comes out there to help you out and provide assistance. So it's better off if your vehicle doesn't shut down in those conditions.
And do you have any other advice for drivers?
Ask for drivers if they are coming through North Dakota during the winter, and to do your pre-trip planning. If it does look like there's going to be winter weather conditions at the time, slow down. I can guarantee you'll get there faster, especially if you end up in the ditch or in a crash. Obviously that might delay the load from getting to where it's supposed to go, or even prevent it altogether from getting there. The main thing is, we want to protect the CMV drivers and other traffic on the roadway. So
better just to stay put if that's what's required.
Stay put, or, if there is some pre-messaging out there about a significant storm coming through this area, it might be conducive to find an alternate route, to where you wouldn't have to cross through North Dakota at the time. But obviously that would put on miles, but sometimes that might be worth it instead of ending up in a ditch or even stalled out here for a day or day and a half, just depending on if the road's closed or not.
Do you find from your position, do you see a lot of people kind of underestimate what winter can be like there?
Yes, I do see that at times, that people underestimating how cold it can get, how fast the conditions can change. There's times where you deal with drivers that are from out of state, that might be from farther south, where they're traveling through North Dakota and they don't have the proper clothing in their vehicle. I myself have dealt with several CMV drivers where their truck has gelled up. They didn't put in the right fuel additive or the right diesel, and they're walking around in flip-flops, no other type of winter weather shoes or gloves or coats, to where that would keep them warm inside the vehicle, or if they even had to get out and walk. So yeah, it does catch people off guard.
So I assume also important to, pack appropriate clothing if one should break down.
Correct. Pack appropriate clothing. Obviously, a lot of the CMV drivers, it's like their second home or their home that they live in. So, hopefully they'll have food and other supplies like that. But the extra clothing is very beneficial as well.
For a link to these videos, you can visit our website at landline.media. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
Firestone tires are for more of everything. More miles for every tire dollar, and more confidence in your fleet. At Firestone, we help fleets save with dependable value. Find your local Firestone dealer today at firestonetire.com/dealer.
Ready to make more money? use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off TruckStop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
When it's time to overhaul your truck engine, help protect it by insisting on a genuine Vibratech TVD crankshaft damper. Heavy duty, absolute premium quality, and they're made right here in the USA. Find a dealer at vibratechtvd.com.
The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has asked for comments concerning detention time, and OOIDA has responded. Welcome back to Landline Now. This is Regulatory Roundup, and I'm Mark Reddig. I'm joined, as always, by OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. Jay, thanks for joining me.
Good to be back.
The FMCSA didn't ask about detention time per se, but about a study. What were the specifics of the FMCSA's notice?
Yeah, and this, again, is a research study that was required in the 2021 Highway Bill, really on the heels of a comprehensive 2018 Department of Transportation Office of Inspector General report that, made some, I think, significant findings on the safety and economic detriments of detention time, but also said that substantive significant data still needs to be gathered. So this study that FMCSA is putting together is really a response to that. And this research study, which has been formally proposed now, will collect data on commercial motor vehicle driver detention time, representative of the major segments of the industry, looking to analyze that data to determine the frequency and severity of detention time, and assess the utility of existing intelligent transportation system solution to measure detention time. So this is really going to be the most comprehensive analysis and data collection that FMCSA has done. Going to be looking at 80 motor carriers, 2,500 commercial motor vehicle drivers, and a year-long research study. So we're going to have plenty of data. The data is going to be collected in a number of new ways via ELDs, via telematic systems, which pros and cons there. So we think the study is going to be productive, going to address some of the shortcomings and the holes from previous studies, and want to see this get up and running. At the same time, I think there are some modifications to the proposal, the initial proposal that we saw from FMCSA that I think if they can improve upon would result in a much better representative data sample once the study begins in full.
What are those modifications?
Yeah, so really the main thing from the proposal is that the carriers that they are going to be bringing on are going to be coming from this company called Speed Gauge. And Speed Gauge has 3,000 different clients, and they're kind of a technology-forward company is the best way I would put it. They have some patents on speed limiters, some driver alert systems, and their population of clients, I think, is probably fleets that tend to more rely on technology. And if you're pulling in all the carriers from that kind of one service, are you going to have enough diversity in your population study? So that's a question that we raised and would like to see FMCSA kind of certainly get more carriers, especially more small business carriers, involved that aren't necessarily using the services offered by Speed Gauge, and kind of brings up the question to what extent should be ELDs, these other technologies, these telematic services be involved in the detention time study. And it's kind of a fine line. We don't oppose using ELDs to collect information on detention time. We think it can provide some more accurate data to really make the case on why significant policy reforms are needed. And anytime you can get more accurate data to express the problems with detention time, to kind of make that case to Congress, which this report is going to eventually go to, we think that can be helpful. Of course, we also know the privacy concerns when it comes to using ELD data, using technology, and FMCSA was kind of unclear in how they were going to protect personal information for anyone who's participating in the study. So we want FMCSA to clarify that a little bit as well, really ensuring that any data is kind of aggregated in total and kind of not making sure that you can track down personal or individual data for any of the findings that come through the detention time study. And of course, we want to make sure that carriers and drivers who aren't using technology also have a way to participate in the study. So it shouldn't just be limited to carriers and drivers that use ELD and telematics. Really want to make sure that it's open to everybody.
Part of the problem with any study is determining what constitutes detention time. What are the definitions commonly used, and what does OOIDA contend that it should be?
Right. So kind of the standard practice has been, drivers, motor carriers, get 2 hours basically out of their pocket that shippers and receivers have been taken advantage of. We don't agree with that definition. And, FMCSA, as part of this study, is kind of recalibrating their definition of detention time, which, we support. Basically, they're kind of looking at this dwell time category, and that's comprised of a couple different factors. One is, time spent doing tasks related to unloading and loading at facilities. And then any time beyond that is considered detention time. And that's really, I think, going to paint a more accurate picture of all the aggregate time that drivers spend at facilities when they are not actively completing tasks associated with loading and unloading, no matter if that starts right when they get there or if it's 3-4 hours down the line. Hopeful that this new updated definition, kind of updated classification, will eliminate this 2-hour grace time that shippers and receivers have taken advantage of for so long.
Are there other parts of OOIDA's comments that we should note here?
That really sums up the kind of aspects of the information collection request. We think this, if it can be tweaked, we can have that full representative data sample that will be needed. In addition to ELDs providing information, we're also aware of some other mobile applications that can help. It's really just kind of getting a better, more accurate picture. Of course, we also have emphasized that expanding FMCSA's access to ELD data should not infringe upon the legislative mandate restricting its use to ensure compliance with hours of service regulations and hours of service requirements, which is in the ELD mandate legislation. So I think we see the benefits for using it in detention time, which is really goes hand in hand with hours of service. But we've also seen some other attempts to expand that net, and it's a slippery slope, and we don't want FMCSA to really go beyond too much of what they're restricted by law. But of course, ultimately, in order to address the detention time issues, there's got to be more accountability on shippers and receivers who right now are just not incentivized to move drivers through their facilities efficiently. So hopefully the results of this study can implement some policies to achieve that.
Well, let's go on to another topic here. The Women of Trucking Advisory Board is meeting today. And before we get into today's meeting and what they're supposed to be covering, I wonder if you can review for us, Jay, what that committee's mission is.
Yeah, so this, again, was an advisory board established in that 2021 highway bill, really looking at ways to expand opportunities for women to pursue careers in trucking, looking at recruiting, retention, looking at some of the problems in the industry that are certainly of concern for women right now in the industry and certainly make it difficult to attract women in the industry. So this committee was set up a little more than a year ago. They've had numerous meetings in that time. The advisory board itself, I think, is made up from about 15 women representing all sorts of aspects of the trucking industry, whether that's trucking associations, drivers, dispatchers. It's really a great group that have had a lot of meaningful and productive discussions already. The meeting tomorrow, I believe, is kind of going to be the final sort of official meeting per se and discussion before they kind of head back and start coming up with a report that they're going to provide to DOT, FMCSA, and Congress on really making a whole host of recommendations to really improve how women can be better represented across the trucking industry.
OOIDA filed some comments to the board concerning this last meeting here and their topic. Part of that comment centered not just on recruitment, but retention. Can you explain?
Yeah, so the meeting today is really focusing on ways in which trucking companies, nonprofit organizations, training and education providers, and trucking associations may coordinate functions to facilitate support for women pursuing careers in trucking. And, OOIDA have 150,000 members across the country, proud to represent thousands of female drivers as members. But there's no question that women are underrepresented in today's trucking workforce. So we've been supportive of the Women of Trucking Advisory Board. They've already played a pivotal role in addressing several critical issues pertaining to the recruitment, retention, and safety of women in trucking. And we know they're going to certainly continue to provide some recommendations that will improve the well-being for everyone across the industry. We do feel like we want to expand this beyond just recruitment, because that's not going to ensure equal participation moving forward. We've really got to alleviate these systemic issues and shortcomings within the trucking industry that have really made it difficult to attract and retain female drivers. That includes inadequate compensation, lack of accessible truck parking, and of course, personal safety risks that women, unfortunately have to deal with far too often, and especially in comparison to the majority of men in the industry. We submitted quite a few of the advocacy issues that OOIDA has led the way on that could enhance and expand opportunities for women in trucking.
One of the factors the association pointed to that it said could, and I'm quoting here, enhance and expand opportunities for women in trucking was training standards. And I think that that's an important one there. What did the association say on that topic?
Well, certainly far too often there's too many drivers entering the industry now that don't have the basic skills to safely operate a commercial motor vehicle. They don't have really the knowledge of the difficulties and challenges that they're going to face on the road. And, we kind of see that where a driver will enter the trucking industry, get their CDL, and then 6 months down the line, they say, this might not be for me. If you had more comprehensive training standards and more education at the onset, I think you'd see some improved retention rates. So ensuring that high-quality training programs are accessible, fair, and safe will not only contribute to highway safety, but create an environment where women feel adequately prepared to excel in their roles as a professional driver. Certainly some of the regulations that went into effect in early 2022 have been helpful, but we know they need to be improved upon, especially when it comes to behind-the-wheel training, and as well as ensuring better quality, better experience for trainers that are on the job as well.
Okay. Well, Jay, we're running out of time here. I want to thank you very much for all the information. It's certainly been helpful.
Thank you.
I've been talking with OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. And folks, if you want to learn more about these topics, you can do it by going to Landline's website, landline.media. Again, that website, landline.media. We'll be back in just a moment with more of the show. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. After weeks of infighting and multiple votes, we finally have a new Speaker of the House. So what does that mean for issues important to truckers? Here to explain is Colin Long of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. Colin, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's good to be back on. I think it's been a bit of a drought. I'm excited to be here.
Well, great. Glad to have you with us.
Yeah.
So let's start with who the new Speaker is. What can you tell us about him?
His name's Mike Johnson. He's obviously a Republican representative. He hails from the great state of Louisiana, which has become quite a powerful state in the House of Representatives right now. I mean, they've got the number 1 and number 2 Republican members, and don't forget, Republicans are obviously the majority party in the House. They control the House. So Representative Johnson's kind of ascension to the speakership concludes 3 weeks of relatively uncharted territory for the House. I mean, they were without a speaker for a number of weeks, and there had been several candidates who kind of rose to the occasion, but unfortunately couldn't muster enough votes within the Republican conference to become speaker until Mr. Johnson emerged this week, kind of out of nowhere, if we're being honest here. I mean, he's not a very high-profile member of the conference. He certainly led the Republican study group, which is kind of a conservative caucus within the conference, and has been vice chair of the conference. But those are kind of lower-level leadership posts. I don't think most people think you make the jump from there to speaker, but here we are today with a new speaker in the House of Representatives, so they can kind of return to normal business.
What sort of committees has Representative Johnson served on before?
He's really made a name for himself on the Judiciary Committee, and that isn't necessarily one that we spend a lot of time in Washington focusing our efforts and resources on, because there isn't much involving trucking or transportation policy going through Judiciary. And as a result, I think Representative Johnson, or now Speaker Johnson's, resume involving transportation is frankly a little bit light. I don't think that's necessarily unexpected. He hasn't served on the Transportation Committee. It's not necessarily an area of expertise for him. But I was looking through his record of co-sponsored legislation and introduced bills today, and there's really not much involving surface transportation. So he's, in regards to a lot of our issues, a relative unknown, I guess you could say. He doesn't have much of a track record on trucking, but we certainly hope to change that here in the near future. I mean, there's a lot of issues we want to see advanced through the House, from truck parking to restroom access to overtime pay. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And I think hopefully there will be time here in the next few months to focus on some of these issues. Spending is certainly going to be a lion's share of Speaker Johnson's early agenda. I mean, they're looking at a deadline here in a couple weeks for the expiration of federal funding, which would shut down the government. And certainly he needs to navigate that in a way that keeps his caucus together. But hopefully once they resolve a lot of these spending issues and other big ticket issues like the war in Ukraine, the developing war in Israel, crime in the U.S., immigration, inflation, hopefully they find time to get to trucking issues, because they are vitally important to our members.
Has he given us any indication at this point of what his priorities are?
I think it's those issues I just mentioned. I mean, federal spending is what kind of unraveled Kevin McCarthy's speakership, because he had to cut a deal with the Democrats to keep the federal government open. And I think Speaker Johnson is looking at the same problem coming on the horizon in the next couple of weeks, and he needs to pull off a pretty fine balancing act. I think he will get a bit of a grace period. I mean, he's inheriting a problem, a deadline, a looming deadline that wasn't much of his making. So he will probably get a little bit of a grace period from some of the hard right conservatives in his caucus who ousted previous Speaker McCarthy. But I think it's going to be extremely difficult for Republicans in the House to pass all of their spending bills and basically dodge another government shutdown. But that's what he has said will be his number one priority, and I think that's frankly welcomed from our perspective. I mean, funding the government is kind of a core responsibility of our elected officials here in Washington, D.C. And we have a big interest in the legislation that's currently being considered in the House that would fund the Department of Transportation, because if you remember, there's a rider in there that would prevent FMCSA from moving forward with their speed limiter mandate. So we certainly want to see that bill pass the House, and hopefully we get some traction in the Senate as well. I mean, the House is only one part of the equation, but if Speaker Johnson is committed to getting those individual spending bills done, we applaud that as being a legislative priority, because it means a lot for truckers if we can stop that speed limiter mandate.
You mentioned a couple of trucking priorities, restroom access, overtime pay, but there are some bills already out there that we're very interested in. The Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act,
sure,
the CARS Act, which is the anti-electric vehicle mandate, and the DRIVE Act, which is the anti-speed limiter bill.
Yep.
Any idea on how those may fare under his speakership?
We kind of look at truck parking with a little bit of concern, simply because it's clear the Republican conference in the House, which controls the House, is veering further to the right, getting a little bit more conservative, and that includes spending policy as well. They are going to be less likely to pass anything that increases government spending or creates new government spending programs, which, frankly, our truck parking bill does. We just need to demonstrate to them that it has to be a priority, because, people's well-being is at risk because of the parking problem. There are people dying because of parking problems. It's making life much more difficult and unsafe for our members and other commercial motor vehicle drivers. So we need to demonstrate to them, yeah, you can have your concerns with the expansion of government spending and new programs, but there's got to be that realization that at some point in time, the federal government needs to invest in truck parking. And we remind folks, and we're certainly going to remind the new Republican leadership, that the federal government is kind of complicit in this truck parking problem, because hours of service has been reformed recently, but remains extremely rigid. There's not enough flexibility in hours of service. And Congress, in its infinite wisdom, and I'm being very sarcastic, passed an ELD mandate that made things so much worse for truckers and for the truck parking crisis. So if you're going to continue to advance policies that make matters worse, you need to be part of the solution as well. And part of that solution is investing in truck parking. And we understand fiscal responsibility, but there's also a responsibility to the well-being of the folks who run our roads every day. And I'm not just talking about professional drivers. I'm talking about the driving public too. They have a stake in this game, because increasingly they are facing the consequences of the truck parking crisis, and it's having real safety implications.
Just a little bit under a half minute left here, Colin. One other thing I wanted to ask you, we mentioned the Truck Parking Act there. Of course, I had also mentioned the CARS Act and the DRIVE Act, the anti-electric vehicle mandate, and the thing that would forbid the speed limiter mandate. Mm-hmm. Typically, conservatives tend to be small government people. Might that help us with those two bills?
We sure hope so. I mean, we've got a lot of traction on the speed limiter bill specifically with Republicans, and primarily conservative Republicans. And hopefully we can generate that support into consideration in the T&I committee and in the House, and ultimately on the House floor. And I think there's another draw for conservatives there, and that's the protection of small businesses. We know the speed limiter mandate will disproportionately negatively affect small businesses, and hopefully that resonates with those members as well.
Okay, Colin, thank you very much for all the information. We sure appreciate it.
Sure, thanks for having me.
I've been talking with Colin Long of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. And folks, it's important to call your members of the U.S. House and talk about those three bills: the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act, the CARS Act that would forbid the electric vehicle mandate, and the DRIVE Act that would eliminate the speed limiter mandate. You can get a hold of your members of Congress by calling the U.S. Capitol switchboard at 202-224 202-224-3121. Again, that phone number is 202-224-3121. That's our program for today. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
My kids.
Chrome. And I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us.
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.